Hey y'all, and welcome to the Odin School of Mysteries. This is, I believe, the third video, and initially I was going to talk about the layout of the Odinic Mystery System, how each thing is layered and so on and so forth, but I decided not to. I decided that I think just discussing who Odin is would actually be a better thing to talk about first, before we start getting into this other stuff. So, something to keep in mind right off the bat. And I can't stress this enough, and this is really important. And it seems to be something that most people don't even seem to really understand. And it really bothers me. And that is that multiple things can be true at once. Multiple things can be true at the same time. And people get very stuck in their ways when it comes to this. They're like, no, either this is true or that is true. Sometimes multiple things can be true at once. And when we're dealing with something as big, a symbol as big as, say, Odin, the god Odin, it is more true than anything else. You have to understand that the meaning of a symbol will change depending on how it's used. So a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Most symbols, most occult symbols, especially in mystery school symbology, are made up of many, many parts. The all-seeing eye, for example, has about like 4 or 5 different elements to it. And I'm just talking about the eye. I'm not even talking about all the other stuff that's put with. And so essentially what we're doing is we're dealing with memetics. I don't know if you've heard of memetics. Or memes. Where the reason memes are effective is because you have a very large idea. You have a very massive concept, a whole philosophy that is tied up with a bow and given to you in 5 words and a picture. So you have like a picture of like Captain Picard going, ah, and the picture of like, why man, or whatever. And you get the whole concept. You get the whole thing. And it's a magical thing. That is the secret. Well, that is essentially what the runes are. It's memetics. It's a whole philosophy wrapped up in a single letter or story. And so, when you're dealing with a concept like Odin, there's many things that are true at the same time. And depending on his usage, depending on the way that you use him in a sentence, his meaning will change. So the first and most obvious meaning behind Odin, and the way that I would say most people in the world, how they would understand Odin, is simply the fact that he is the king of the gods, the king of the Azure god. He's like the top guy. Right. That is more or less the beginning and the ending of most people's understanding. God, still pretty hot. Then, if you are someone who is more into mythology, someone who it might be a person in the Asatru community or the heathen community, particularly an Odinist, that exoteric version of him will, of course, expand a little bit. The next thing people will say, which is typically wrong, is that people will say that Odin is a war god. This isn't true. And this is why you got to read. I know it's a it's a concept that most people is completely lost on. You gotta read. You have to be willing to read, because if you read the stories, let's see, like this guy here. So my favorite books. Even if you just got this, it's written by Neil Gaiman. It's Norse mythology. It might as well be the Bible, as far as I'm concerned. It is a fantastic book. If you're willing to actually read, you'll discover fairly quickly that Odin's primary motivation in life is not war. That is, I know, shocking to people. People want to make him out to be a war god. He is not a war god. If you're to distill him down to his primary attribute, Odin is a wisdom god, not a war god. All of Odin's stories are always about the acquisition of wisdom. Always about the acquisition of wisdom. I should say, the stories in which he is the primary character in is always about him being the acquisition, is about the acquisition of wisdom. So the fact that he engages in war is kind of interesting, because this is a very common. I know the heathen community hates it when I try and compare heathens to other mythologies, which I think is stupid. That the wisdom god archetype is always primary focus is wisdom, but there's always a very small war component to it. Even with Jesus comes, and it'll be at the story of Jesus, and he comes in peace, and he's there to heal the sick and bring people into the fold and give people wisdom and so on and so forth. But what does it say that happens later? Jesus comes back with a sword. He comes back riding a white horse at the head of an army. We see this with, I'm not trying to compare Odin to Jesus per se, but we see the same thing with Odin, where at the beginning it's all about the acquisition of wisdom, about teaching people and so on and so forth, and then at the end, at Ragnarok, or Armageddon, so to speak, Odin comes at the head of an army. So his war component, the thing that everyone gets hung up on for some reason, and I don't understand why, is actually, is a means to an end. It's a means to an end. He does war because there's something there's something specific he's looking to get out of it. And as a wisdom god, as someone who seeks wisdom in all things, he becomes our high ideal. So he starts branching off of just the king of the gods, and then he becomes, in a sense, our savior. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's not the savior in the same sense that Jesus is a savior. He's our savior in the way that he showed us how to set ourselves free. And this is where there's a big difference between the heathen side of things and the Christian side of things. The Christian side of things would say that Jesus came to set us free, that he came to rescue us. The Norse side of things would say, Odin, he came to rescue us, but not by throwing us a life vest. He came to save us by teaching us how to build a boat. He gave us the means to save ourselves. He gave us all the knowledge we needed, all the runes we needed, in order to set ourselves free. And so he becomes the archetype of wisdom. He becomes the archetype of Gnosis. Gnosis means knowledge. He becomes the archetype of illumination. He dwells in the stars. So when we say that we want to be like Odin, or if you're an Odinist, or if you're part of the mystery school of Odin, that symbol goes a little bit deeper. Now, it's no longer just a story about the king of the gods. It begins to be a symbol of enlightenment. And so as we go down the line and we start observing the symbolism around Odin, we start to see that all the symbols that are associated with him, with the god, are symbols of wisdom and knowledge. You have Hugin and Munin, for example, is a good example. Now, I'm later on in the videos, I'm going to go into a lot more detail on the symbolism of all of this. So I'm going to skip a lot of stuff. Okay, so most of this you're just going to have to take my word on. Believe me, there's a lot more to it, and there's reasons why each of this is the way it is. So Hugin and Munin means thought and memory. Thought and memory are the prerequisites that are required for knowledge, for wisdom. You can't, I can't remember who said it, but was it Pythagoras? I don't remember. One of those Greek people said there is no learning without remembering. There is no learning without remembering. Thought and memory. You can't learn, you can't acquire wisdom without your two ravens. And it's very interesting to note that ravens are monogamous birds. You'll know in all through mythology, the wisdom god and the truth goddess, well, like an example would be Thoth and the goddess Ma'at in Egyptian mythology, they're always married to each other. Truth is always married to wisdom. And we see this with Hugin and Munin. Thought and memory, the masculine and the feminine, married together to create Gnosis. His spear, Gungnir, is also called the Spear of the Mysteries. There's kind of a little simplistic version up there, if you can see it, in the sticky note. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't want to get it down. You know, that's another one of those very powerful symbols that are associated with him. Again, I can't go into all the specific details in this video because it is a massive topic that requires a lot of background to even begin to be able to understand a lot of it. However, the quick version, skipping everything, the skipping everything version goes a little bit like this. If you have a triangle, an equilateral triangle, an equilateral triangle is called the pillar of stability, or the stable pyramid sometimes. And the reason they say that is because the dualistic nature is on the bottom, it's on the ground. You can't, if you try and push it, you won't go anywhere. It's grounded. You can't push it. Dualism, the two divided natures are on the bottom, and the unification is at the top. This is called the shining tip of the spear. It's very, very, very similar in nature to the all-seeing eye pyramid that we see on the back of the $1 bill. The unity bill. It's very similar to that. A lot of these old symbols are all very unique to each other. You know, the Jacob's ladder has the Masons have Jacob's ladder. We have a world tree, and it functions very similar to each other. Anyway, so you can't push it over, right? The shining tip of the spear, the gnosis part, is pointed up. This means that you are wise, you have wisdom, you have a unified mind, the ability to see where you're going, and which is more, a spear means the ability to make effectual change in the universe. You're a master player. You're not a slave. But if that is put upside down, that the spear is upside down, what does that mean? It means that now you're upside down like this, right? And now unity is placed into earth. It is buried. You know, the Christians would say the light is put under a bushel, right? The light, the shiny tip of the spear, is buried in the earth, and now you're unbalanced. Now the pillar of stability is the pillar of instability. It's the pyramid of unstableness. So now, if your mind is like this, it means I could just push you wherever I want, and you'll go wherever I want you to go. You're a slave to the system. If you look at a lot of classic art, right, or statues in particular, if a person is holding their shield, or I'm sorry, their sword pointed up, that means I am a conqueror. If the sword is pointed down, it means the ground on which I walk is conquered territory. So when you talk about there's a very famous thing that was done where people would throw a spear over a battlefield in order to say that these dead belong to Odin. But because they don't understand the symbology, the true meaning of that is particularly missed. And typically people think, oh, this is a compliment. It is not a compliment. It is not a compliment. To being called a downward pointed spear is not a compliment at all. It means these people are conquered territory. It means that these people, due to their ignorance, suffer and die. It is not a compliment at all. It's a symbolic way of insulting somebody. So, Odin's spear represents the ability to make effectual change in the universe. It means being able to wield wisdom effectively and to change the world around it. And in the Odinic system of things, or at least in this particular mystery school, the spear is actually our main symbol. You would say that the Masonic symbol is the square and compass, right? It makes kind of I don't know if I can do it. Kind of looks like that. I can't do it. You know, it has kind of the looks a little like that. Masonic symbol has the G for the generative principle in the middle. That's their symbol. Ours is the Gungnir's. Okay, well, I'm just going to show it to you. This is a very simplistic version of it. Very simplistic version of it. But this is essentially what it is. This is the Spear of the Mysteries. So when you first get inducted into the Odinic school, you're given a spear that hangs around your neck, and it hangs upside down. Like this. It's because you're not yet alive yet. You're not yet alive. You are a dead person, like we covered in the last two videos. You live in the underworld. You're not alive. You're a slave to the system. You don't understand what's going on. Your shining tip of the spear is buried in the earth. Your conquered territory. Right? But as you grow, as you begin to unify the masculine and the feminine principles, and you start learning the mysteries and start figuring things out, it is said that your spear becomes weighted down. And as you pass the gate, the first... there's no way around it. Down here, as you pass the first gate, right, you leave the underworld, Your upside down spear begins to be weighted, and as you pass the gate, it flips. Right. You notice the difference between these two things? Notice the difference? That's on purpose. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Okay. None of these things are on accident. So, but then after you pass the first gate and become alive, your spear is flipped upside down, and then then it hangs from your neck like this. It means you no longer conquer territory anymore. You have gnosis. You can see in the dark for the first time. You're breathing free air again. You're no longer interred. You're not hanging from your neck anymore. You're free. Like in the Odinic, I'm sorry, the spear, sorry. When Odin hangs from Yggdrasil, his spear is buried inside of him. It's buried in matter. But then it is pulled out. I'm getting sidetracked. I apologize. Anyway, so that's the Spear of the Mysteries. I apologize, I got sidetracked. And I don't edit these on purpose because I'm not really supposed to. The mysteries are meant to be told orally. So, I do my best I can not to have to edit anything. Unless, like, my phone rings or something. And then we go on to, so we talked about Hugin and Munin, for example. Then we talked about Spear of the Mysteries. And then, then we have Odin's Wolves. If you are familiar with shamanic practice at all, and that's kind of how I got started into doing what I'm doing now. Is I started off practicing shamanism, and through the consequence of that, I found my way into the mysteries of Odin. Odin is also said to be a proto-shaman, a Sleipnir running up and down the world tree through all the different worlds and things. Anyway, wolves are known in shamanism as the knowers of things. The knowers of things. And is there any consequence? Is it by accident that Odin has two of them, a male and a female? I mean, the pattern keeps repeating itself. Right? The pattern keeps repeating itself. At some point, this is going to have to start clicking. And it will start to click. There's nothing new under the sun. These patterns are going to repeat over and over and over and over again. So Odin is a wisdom god. His very symbol and all the symbols associated with him are symbols that represent wisdom and the acquisition of wisdom for the purpose of getting wisdom and teaching wisdom to those who don't have wisdom. He is a wisdom god. Can I get an amen? He's not a war god. Think of a good character study would be Thor. What is the difference between Odin and Thor? Thor is a meathead. Thor is, if you look up in the sky, he's the planet Mars. With his big red beard, his big red hair. He's like Mars. He is, all he is brawn. His favorite thing to do is hurt things. He's a brawler. He likes to fight. He is a war god. If Thor is like the drunken brawler and Tyr is like the noble knight, basically. Those are both examples, good examples of war gods where their primary attribute is combat. Odin is not that. Odin is not that. Odin has an arm ring that every day produces 9 rings. How many steps does it take Odin to get up the world tree? 9 steps. Okay. None of these things are on accident. Nothing is on accident. Everything is on purpose. So, depending on how his symbol is used. Okay, so there's a concept called astrotheology. Most people haven't heard of it unless you have been ass deep in the occult or the mystery school systems for very long. Astrotheology is the belief that that stars, planets, and other celestial bodies are gods. Odin's is the star Sirius. Is the star Sirius up there in the night sky? The dog star is what it's called. That is Asgard. The star Sirius is Asgard. It's the throne in the heaven. And Odin has a wife named Frigg, which is Sirius B. We only just now discovered Sirius B a couple decades ago. Was it like 1993 or something like that? In Sirius A and Sirius B, Odin and Frigg, they had a son that they loved very much. But he was murdered and he fell to the underworld. His name is Balder, with the blonde hair. He lives just outside. You want to see Balder, you want to see what a god looks like, you look outside and you'll see him. So depending on how the symbol is used, we could be talking about a star. We could be talking about gnosis. We could be talking about the god himself. We could be talking about just a myriad of things, right? All of those things are true at the same time. All of them are true at the same time. They're both one and different. And so this is why it gets a little complicated. This is why if you are someone who... I'm getting close to 30 minutes. I should wrap this up. If you watch a lot of these kind of videos on YouTube and they say, oh, this symbol means this, don't believe them. Because they don't understand what they're talking about. Symbols are complicated things. They're very complicated things. If someone is giving you a this means that explanation, they do not understand the philosophy. I said before, there's two parts to it. There's a key and there's a door, and you have to have both to unlock the wisdom. You have to have both to unlock what is actually being presented to you. The mysteries are very well hidden, and they keep themselves very well because most people do not have or cannot get both things. They cannot get both things. So, that's my 2 cents on that. So, if you're one of those people who tries to offer this means that explanation, now you should know better. Now you should know better. Because there is a lot to each symbol. There's a lot of philosophy that goes into each and everything. You have to have the philosophy and the symbol. One's a key, one's a door, and you have to have both of those things to unlock the door, open it, and see what's actually behind it. What's behind it is the kind of knowledge that rewrites the universe for you. It's the part that sets you free. It's the part that will help you to leave the underworld. It helps you to figure out the system of the universe. And this goes way beyond religion. This is not religion. In fact, a lot of the people who end up joining mystery schools are atheists. There is no expectation of belief here. No one is forcing you to believe in the god Odin, that he literally exists. But there is wisdom here that is ancient and long forgotten, and that you have the opportunity to discover. But it takes, you have to do the work. You have to do the work. And nobody is actually willing to do the work, which is why people suffer and die in the underworld and are recycled here over and over and over again for eternity. You want to leave, you got to do the work. The door out of here is narrow. Most people miss it. Not many people find it. And even those who find it, even fewer are even willing to walk the road. Even fewer are even willing to walk the road. Because the demand on you is high. And most people are not willing to pay that kind of price to get free. Which is why most people don't get free. So, I'm at 30 minutes. All right. I love you guys. This was a discussion on Odin. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.